Hey everyone, this is Nim from Shylmagoghnar, and I'm doing a commentary for the song and video Follow the River. So let's start by talking about what this album will be about. Previous album Transience ended with an instrumental called Life. Life, of course, ends in death, and that's exactly where this album will kick off. We're seeing the album from the perspective of a person who is in reality dying, but he's not noticing that he's going through the inward journey that someone would go through in those final moments where the brain is still active, but we don't really know what they're thinking. The journey of death has always interested me a lot. I'm not a religious person whatsoever. However, I think it's interesting that we have this big thing ahead of us and no one knows exactly what's going to happen, even though some claim they do, of course. I've also always been interested in mythology, and of course, death and the realm of death is a very common theme in that. And I wanted to do something similar, but in a more modern way, I guess you could say. I assume that when you're dying, that logic just completely disintegrates. And what you'll be seeing is probably maybe more like a dream than reality. And for this album, I documented a lot of my own dreams to figure out what my own logic is in that world. And I try to apply it to the lyrics of this album. Sadly, another reason that I wanted to make this music and this album is because last year my mom passed away. As it turned out, she had a brain tumor. She got diagnosed and it took about 3 or 4 months for her to die from it. That was a very bitter experience, and well, I have nothing good to say about that. But I did need something to pour all of those unresolved emotions into, so I decided to dedicate this album to her. She was a very, very big supporter of this project. She loved when I was playing guitar. Like from the start, she had been super supportive. Both my parents, by the way, had been super supportive about me playing guitar and had been saying for years, kid, you need to do something with that stuff. It's something special. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad, for making that possible. All right, so that's a little bit of an introduction for the tracks, and let's go look at the video and see what we can talk about. Let's start talking about the blindfold and the piano playing. The blindfold and the cloth that I'm wearing was because we knew that the clip would probably be like black and white or would have some very high contrast. And in film, it really helps to have cloth which has a lot of tiny pieces of ribbon sticking out and stuff like that, because contrast really brings that out. And we wanted to give the impression that there was this wanderer who had been in this world for such a long time that his entire clothes became ragged, basically. And I then ended up using that same outfit for the piano as well, just because it looked good. However, there was a little bit of a downside to it when playing piano, namely I had a blindfold in front of my eyes. I couldn't really feel my hands because they were wrapped pretty tightly in cloth. I was playing on a piano that I had never played on before. It was in the apartment of my friend Ming, who recorded the video. And there was just lots of stuff like that. And I must say, that was really awful. I had to do many, many retakes of that piece because I just felt like I was just playing blindly into nothingness. I really had no idea what I was doing. The opposite of the coin was that, of course, I did the vocals with it, which we'll see in a second. And that was perfect for me because I hate being in front of a camera. So of course, having a blindfold on is fantastic because you're not aware of the camera in front of you. So it's much easier to just do your thing and then forget about the camera after a couple of seconds. And that turned out really well. We had a couple of stationary takes. We had a couple of takes where it was just twirling around me with the big camera. And he made the cut that eventually is visible in the video for all the instruments. All right, moving on. you can see, we have a lot of shots with mirrored images and trippy lines and stuff like that. I wanted the album to look like it could be seen by someone who is not completely sane anymore. The brain is, of course, disintegrating, it's not getting oxygen. Anything you see will probably be very strange. Also, I just like looking at trippy animations. Why not use it in our own video clip, right? So those eye shots, I had to put mascara around my eye so you could film it and you could cut it out very easily and manipulate it in any way that you wanted to. Eyes are a very common theme in this video clip because the person describes that they're feeling that they're being observed by billions of eyes. I imagine that those are the eyes of the people that have died before them or lives that have never even been lived before. He sees faces in the water of people that may exist at some point, or they may never get a chance. Of course, all of this is within the context of that the person who sees all of this believes it to be real. Whether it is or not, I think that's completely up to the listener. Moving on. That quote is something that I heard in a dream. Fractured though this world may seem, all becomes one when observed from the cracks in the seams. I had a dream once where I was in a world that was very fragmented. None of it made sense. It had a strong resemblance to when you break a mirror. You get all of these tiny mirror images that by themselves look okay, but as one big picture they look completely distorted and it becomes really hard to see what you're even looking at. The person in the video clip is seeing this world in a similar way. It all looks very disjointed, but somehow he noticed that if he looks at it from a certain perspective, it just clicks, it just makes sense, and it's like he's always been there. That's what happened in my dream as well. Commentary on the drums and the bass guitar. The bass guitar I'm playing with fingers here. I like using both fingers and guitar picks. I don't think any of them are better than the other. They just simply sound different. From a production standpoint, you use whatever sounds good. Why wouldn't you? So, you know, I'm not a purist at all. For the drums, I had a big problem while we were making this video. I had a herniated disc. I think it was the S1, I'm not sure anymore. What that meant was, first of all, I had a big loss of power in my left foot. So anything with double bass was really, really hard to do. I had trouble to push down the pedal far enough to make the beater hit the skin. To make it worse, it was during the peak of the pain, so I had to use a lot of painkillers to even be able to sit on a drum stool. And sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. So if I look a little bit stiff while I'm playing the drums, imagine that I'm just sitting there going like. Another thing about the drums, the cymbals in the clip are stacked. That's a pretty common thing to do because drum cymbals are of course extremely loud. While I was recording this, I was still living in an apartment with people right next to me, above me, to every side there were people and the walls were paper thin. Usually I drum on an acoustic kit with silenced cymbals and silenced drum skins, which you can see behind me, of course. It's really a brilliant solution in my opinion. And for this, of course, I had to stack those things so they at least looked a little bit more convincing than those perforated cymbals that I have right here. Don't know if you can see that, but there's lots of holes in here and you can tell right away that this is not a real acoustic cymbal. Of course, I'm telling you that now, so it didn't have a lot of point, but I think for a video clip, there's still a little bit of acting that's going on. It needs to look cool. So, you know, moving on. This part. That entire chaotic part that you just heard, that was an experiment with different kinds of alternate chords. When you're playing around with chords, it's good to not always just use the same ones. So if you, let's say you have a song that uses a couple of bass chords for a riff. Let's say you're using 4 or 8 chords for a riff. The problem is if you repeat that part a couple of times because, well, you're going to have to play a solo or you're going to have to do a vocal over it, or you just like the riff and you want to repeat it a couple of times. You can do that, but if you're just going to copy paste it, it's going to be stale after a couple of seconds. One of the things you can do for that is the use of parallel chords, borrowed chords, alternate chords. There's lots and lots of a variety of chords that you can take to make something sound the same but different. So this riff was me basically going from main chord to alternate chord to parallel to borrowed, etc., and just bouncing back and forth a couple of times. Because the vocals were supposed to talk about this world that feels familiar but strange at the same time. I forgot what the word for that is, but I really like doing this thing where vocals and music are telling the same story and carrying each other slightly higher than they would if they would not do that. I do use music theory for writing songs, but I would say it's on a rather playful level. I'm not a massive music theory buff. I know my way around it when I need to, but I just use whatever I need in the moment to solve the puzzle, so to say. It helps to know a couple of things like modulation or voice leading. That kind of stuff really helps. And chord building, of course. But that comes, in my opinion, that comes automatically when you're just writing a lot. Okay, back to the video clip. I man, scary. Yeah, we're doing that hand thing. That was an idea of Meng. He told me to just imagine that I'm trying to grab a ray of light. And the cool thing was, while we were filming, there was a tiny ray of light that was coming from somewhere. I don't think it was intended. And it was piercing right through my fingers. And I had the blindfold on, so I could only see this tiny bit of light from the bottom. And I had this trippy view of my hands, and the light really felt like it was flowing through my hands like water. I kept trying to grab it, to, you know, just touch it and stuff like that. So Meng said, yeah, keep doing that. That looks great. And to be honest, I just completely forgot that we were filming it. I was just having fun with the light ray. About the guitars, it's the main instrument, I would say, for this band. The melodies very heavily carry the songs, and usually the songs are written around those melodies. I start with a melody, then I build the bass line and the drums underneath it. Then I add the rhythm guitars, then I add accents and counterpoint, other instruments, and finally I add vocals and lyrics. Moving on. This stuff is typical Shylmagoghnar to me, by the way. I've had this part stuck in my head for years. In the distance, the rivers converge on one point. That's where the album name Convergence comes from. The river that I'm following is apparently just my river. Everyone else has their own, which run parallel to each other without ever being able to touch until the very last part where you get back to the sea. That's where all of the streams come together. That's where they converge. As you can see, the video producer Ming really likes doing these these fishy animations. He likes playing around with particles and 3D effects like that. It's something we had to find a middle ground in because I'm not a very big fan of 3D animation. I really prefer practical effects whenever possible, even though they're of course more expensive. But I like these things, these swirling motions. Like you can tell that he steers it by hand. He makes them move in a way that it looks organic. So there's still the human touch to it, and that's something that I enjoy about it. And you know, these collaborations, I think it's important that every artist gets to put in their creative part. And I'm always very happy about working with him. He's the same guy who makes the album covers, by the way. That piano is a throwback to Cosmic Tide. I wanted there to be a few connections to the previous two albums, because it's supposed to be a trilogy. Holding on here for a moment, I just want to say this part, that's when my mania kicked in. I'm not healthy. I have schizoaffective disorder, which, without talking too much about it, is a little bit like being bipolar. So I have these long times of depression, like lasting for a couple of months. But then at some point, suddenly the switch flicks and I go into a manic state where everything is completely overwhelming and beautiful, but also very stressful. You get an insane amount of ideas, more than you can ever work with. The thing about it is, not all of those ideas are good. In German, they call it Schnapsidee, something which you think is a great idea when you're drunk, and then the next morning you wake up and you're like, what the hell did I write down on this napkin? But sometimes you get something which is good, and when you hear it back, you go like, yeah, that was a great idea, let's stick with that. So 10 minutes of writing maybe for this entire part, and I think it's my favorite part of the song, so sometimes cool things happen. That tapping part killed me while I was recording. I was doing full takes of the entire song on the guitar, no problem. I could not get that tap right. I really don't know what it is, but as soon as someone points a camera at you, all of that hard work just goes, it's just gone. So we ended up doing a couple of retakes of that, and yeah, shit happens. Cool, I really like that one. Those shots of the river that you often see, if I'm not mistaken, those are all recorded by Ming at a place near him. He lives somewhere in France, and it's a very beautiful area. So I think he went out for a couple of days and took lots and lots of shots, and it's always good to have ambient shots like that. The part that's going to come now is where there's the piano playing in the background. That piano part was written, I think, before Transience was even started. It was written right after Emergence. It was an autumn night, very late. I tend to work late, so it was like 4 o'clock in the morning or something. And I looked outside and I could already see the tiniest glimpse of sunlight coming over a hill. And I felt lonely, but in a very good way. You know, sometimes you're lonely and you're just happy about that. And that entire piano thing just came to mind. I just wrote it all down, hit save, and went to bed. And then I completely forgot about it for a couple of years. And I found it recently while I was working on this album. Wrote the entire instrumentation around it, and yeah, now it's part of Shylmagoghnar. That's how it goes. Yeah, that part, again, based upon a dream. There was a melody playing over the horizon, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. And at the same time, there were these ghostly neon creatures which were just dancing next to a riverside. It was like an interpretive dance of your life. They were moving in slow motion, but with every move they made, I actually recognized what they were trying to say. It's like, oh yeah, it's that memory. Oh yeah, it's that memory. They were doing a reenactment of my entire life while dancing in slow motion. And it was just a very memorable image. So yeah, I felt that it fit very well to the story matter here. So I put it in there. The melody just kept repeating, but every single time there was something a little bit different about it. It was like it kept getting reshaped, rewritten. It was never finished, but it was always perfect. So I guess perfection is not just a single state, according to my dreams. That vocal part was recorded the day after my mom died. Yeah, that part, again, literal interpretation of what's happening. A single voice may seem like the whir of a river when stretched in time. So that last word, the whir of the river, gets stuck in a delay loop that gets stretched in time and becomes this thing. That's some of the biggest fun to me when making albums. I play around with automations a lot. For people who don't know about audio software, automation is like when you're watching a play and someone is controlling the lights. Someone's going from that actor to that actor, or they switch to blue for a day scene. They switch to like purple for an intimate night scene, stuff like that. Because otherwise, what you would be seeing is a play in a room that's just fully lit, and even if the actors are great, you're missing out on that extra layer of emotion, that extra layer of guidance and what the author wanted you to see, wanted you to feel while watching the play. To me, music production is like directing a play. The instruments are the actors, but they're not all created equal. And at different parts of the song, a different actor may be the one that you want to be on front. I can only suggest to people who are working with audio and are not doing this yet, for the love of God, start doing it. It's the most important ingredient in production. More important than hearing every instrument perfectly, more important than getting the perfect guitar tone. I know we're all looking for that one. It's not going to happen. Yeah, start it. It's super important. Reverse of the piano part that we heard earlier. That's a reference to the ending of I Am the Abyss that also had the reversed melody. That's something that I've been doing for Shylma for years. And yeah, it works really well. So I'm glad that I got to use it again here. Playing with light again. I like doing fade outs for songs where I want to give you the feeling that whatever's happening there continues basically endlessly. I only use that when that's the message that I want to give. Otherwise it may just feel like a cop-out to the end of a song to me. Sometimes a fade out is the exact right ingredient, and I feel like that was the case here. So yeah, Follow the River for Convergence. personally one of my favorite songs that I ever wrote for this band. I think every album has a couple of songs that just stick out to me personally. Every song tells a story that the other one doesn't. Every song does something different. But for every album, you have your favorites. This one is definitely high on the list for me of all the albums. I'm very happy about it. All right, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section and I'll try to answer them. Also, this video format is completely new to me, so I'm really just trying something here. So if you have any feedback on that, that's also very welcome. Yeah, let me know what you think and I'll see what I can do with it. See you guys. Bye.